Ho ho hoppy holidays! It's a new episode of W3 Radio.
When you want the taste of a truly great beer.
I'm Michael Schofield.
And I'm Dave Gillespie.
We've been on hiatus for a little bit, but we are back to recap the terrible news of the last week or two. The FCC repealed net neutrality rules early on December 14th, 2017. This goes hand in hand with essentially a year of, I think, like terrible news about web policy, beginning with the DRM making it into HTML, which we
right. It's like a trend, kind of. I think in this podcast where we've been talking about these like horrible decisions that are going to affect the web.
Not only has 2017 been a terrible year for literally everything else, it's been bad for the future of the internet. Let's recap a little bit. So the FCC had some ability to regulate neutrality because the internet had been defined as a common carrier. What actually happened in this repeal was the repeal of the definition of that. But what that meant was that the FCC was no longer empowered to regulate,
like as a utility, essentially.
As a utility, and this was passed. This is all passed under the guise of an Internet Freedom Act. That this is good for the freedom of the internet, to let companies compete over it.
It's good for. Are you saying the repeal was framed as freedom?
That's how it was framed. Yeah, the repeal itself was called. I'll confirm. It was something like the Internet Freedom Act.
It was something like that. Yeah, they're really. Yeah, it's freedom for the ISPs to do whatever they want. is what it is. But yeah. Yeah, I can't find the name of it either. I was browsing through this article trying to find that name because it is so absurd. But yeah, and this whole vote happened basically. What I've seen something like public opinion on this for Democrats and Republicans. It's like 86% of Democrats were not in favor of repeal, and like something like 75% of Republicans. So it's like a highly bipartisan issue in favor of keeping these net neutrality rules, and this five person unelected board of the FCC gets to make these sweeping changes that no one likes.
There was additional scandal in that their essentially open comment box, aside from being buried and difficult to find, had been flooded by bots in favor of the act.
Right.
There was a whole campaign by nonprofits, even folks who ironically stand to gain from DRM and HTML, like Netflix, were against the net neutrality repeal. So these campaigns, like Battle for the Net, like generated hundreds of thousands of signatures. The FCC didn't even look at the comments.
Yeah, I saw something about that where they were saying that if you commented in that open, in that form, that the only way that they would tally it is if you had a substantial argument or something. Like you couldn't just say like a simple one line, I support net neutrality. If you didn't like have a reasoned argument, they didn't even include it. There was another thing about whenever you would see people urging people to go and comment there, they would say, don't do it from your mobile phone, because they were excluding things that were coming from mobile devices. And then, like you said, all the bots, the most hilarious one was Barack Obama, apparently, commented in there. And that there was a bunch of news articles about that Barack Obama commented that he wants net neutrality reversed, with the address of like 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, clearly fake, things in there that they included in the feedback, and then were excluding genuine, opposition. So This whole thing's a mess.
The general consensus from the public is lack of surprise,
Yeah.
and also, this kind of sense of disempowerment. You can sign petitions to no avail, and especially for those of us who make our livings on the internet, it sort of caps a certainly interesting year off with kind of a sour tone. Now, for the record, it's going to take several months for the provisions in the repeal to go into effect.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also going to court and, there's people suing. There's a lot of stuff that's going to hold this up from actually going into effect anytime soon. So hopefully that means we can, people can mobilize some kind of resistance to, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it'll take. It's almost like hoping for, another thing to pile on to the hopes of the 2018 election, is that maybe we can get flip Congress around and then lobby this new Congress to make some changes to this ruling, or I don't know. So
finally in 2020, we can elect President Mark Zuckerberg to,
right.
help heal the wounds.
Yeah, I mean, he did that thing in India, didn't he? Was it India, or I don't remember where it was, but he was trying to float that cheap or free internet or whatever, and it was like the opposite of net neutrality. It was like, here's this for like $1 a month or whatever, you can get Facebook and Google and these couple things, or like and it got completely shut down in that country because it was so like, that's what they want to do. That's what these ISPs and things like that and these big names like that want to do with the internet. They want to have these lanes where you pay for certain services, and if you pay more, you get other services and whatever. Like there's clear evidence that it will happen if net neutrality goes away, right? So
this whole conversation about net neutrality is often about digital assets, but the reality is that the war for the infrastructure, for the hardware, and an ironic twist of fate, a not totally unrelated piece of news, is that Apple admitted to purposefully slowing down older generations of iPhones with the argument that, gosh, this is to preserve battery life that deteriorates over time, but has the effect of encouraging those who have older iPhones to upgrade to a newer one. This piece of news has not been conflated with the net neutrality debate, but it's the same, right? Just as Comcast controls the actual wires that feed into our living rooms, Apple controls the hardware through which we access the internet. And
right.
And by deliberately slowing it down in favor of buying a new piece of hardware, that does pretty much the same thing. It is a non-neutral act.
This is an interesting development. I mean, it's one of those things that people have been speculating about for years. There's always that feeling, like every time a new iPhone gets announced, it feels like mine suddenly gets slow, and it's like, is it collective delusion? Like I want the new thing, and so my mind is telling me that my phone is slower, or is it a big conspiracy or whatever? Turns out it's maybe it is a big conspiracy.
It really is a conspiracy. As of December 20th, Apple confirmed that it had implemented power management features. It's a feature, not a bug, in older iPhones to improve performance and prevent unexpected shutdowns as the battery and the devices begin to degrade.
Yeah, and I think one of the key points here is that they're not denying it because they have a technical reason that they believe is like defensible, and I can, not just that I'm an Apple fanboy, because I am in a lot of ways, but I can understand that I think that argument has merit, and I understand what they're doing by not denying it and saying we have a legitimate reason. The biggest problem I have is that they never told people this. Like, yeah, I should know, right? I should be able to go and get a new battery then, instead of a new contract for a new phone, or spending $800 or what the iPhone 10's like a $1,200 or something on a new phone when I could go and get a battery replacement for a fraction of that cost, and my phone will go back to its original performance, right? And so
yeah, we're assuming choice of battery replacement as an example, but that's not a choice that actually exists in Apple products. I don't think you can take your phone in and get it replaced, right?
I think it depends on which one. I think it's possible to do a battery replacement, but it's Apple would have to do it, and there's a lot of weird stuff with how they're put together, that things are fused together in ways that they can't be replaced. So I don't know. It's it's a weird one. I saw somebody on Twitter talking about how they had it was a Reddit post where somebody was saying, I keep like an external one of those battery cases on my phone that gives my phone extra battery, or I'm always at my desk and it can always be plugged in. So I don't have an issue with but with my battery being degraded, and there's no way for me to go in and turn off the like slower performance. Like the thing that Apple's saying they're doing this because of, which is batteries dying. So let's make the phone less performant so the battery doesn't die. If your phone's always plugged in, you don't have a problem with the battery dying anymore. So the performance shouldn't be taken away for somebody like that, right? And so, even if they gave you the option, like, preserve battery functionality by flipping a switch, and then, you get 20%, performance or something like that. Like, there's ways they could have done this that would have been completely above board. And instead, they kind of hid it from everybody.
This is a feature that's already in there. If you hit 20%, you get that go into low power mode.
That's true. Yeah, it turns off a bunch of the processor hogging features. So
whether or not this lawsuit that's going forward has any kind of like legal weight, I suppose is left better to the experts. But I don't think it does. Nevertheless, to me, this, if not a direct, is a nice analogy to the net neutrality conundrum. We use devices that we don't control. We have computers that disobey our orders or don't tell us everything that's going on within them. And we're fast getting to a point where these computers are going to be parts of our bodies. And now in the last quarter of 2017, we've really seen the realization of most people's fears. And do we have any final thoughts about this Apple thing, or
no? Yeah. It's not gonna stop me from buying a new iPhone next year.
Can I propose? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just bought a new iPad Mini like for my kid, and it's like can I propose a conspiracy of a conspiracy? So we always thought that, hey, is Apple doing something to our phones to make them like suck after a new phone release? Turns out that was true. What if the actual conspiracy is that Apple pushed out this the proof of this information to raise concerns about zero regulation about network devices? Yeah, maybe. Because we know that Tim Cook is like kind of like pro net neutrality, and he's certainly pro encryption, right?
Yeah.
So like, what if he's like, all right, it's time to let the cat out of the bag. It's like, let's admit to this one conspiracy so that we can raise folks' concerns where it hits the most. Maybe they don't care about net neutrality, but they care about their shitty phone in their pocket. Let's look at this on a positive.
Yeah, I don't know.
Side.
That's a stretch for sure, but that fits right in with how conspiracy theories generally work. So I like it.
Just today, the team behind jQuery Mobile and jQuery UI made a statement about its future. And since it's been a very long time since either of these projects have had a release, if you hadn't read this, what would you have expected? Seeing, given the headline, "The Future of jQuery UI," what would you think the first paragraph would say without reading it?
When you sent me this is my exact thought. The future of jQuery UI and jQuery Mobile. I was expecting that first sentence to be, "We're sad to announce that because of lack of feature, support and stuff for these projects. We're going to be retiring them. And the first sentence starts going that like it even makes me think that the last few years have been difficult for the jQuery UI and jQuery mobile products. It should say next. So we've made the hard decision to retire these projects.
Yeah, these are now in management mode or maintenance mode.
Not the case.
No, in fact, the statement was much more anticlimactic. Basically, Scott Gonzalez, the jQuery UI project manager for a long time, he's the bulk of the comments and GitHub issues. If you've, for some reason, like I have, been looking at the jQuery UI repository,
Yep.
So he's stepping down in favor of to be replaced with Alex Schmidt, who is also one of the project leads for jQuery Mobile. It looks like both of these are kind of like combining.
Yeah, it's basically the
management efforts. Yeah,
the two groups are combining, and Alex is going to be heading up both the combined effort to maintain both of these projects. I don't know if there was more to it than just basically saying we're combining them.
The top comment echoes our sentiments, though, I think. Why not just retire jQuery Mobile?
Yeah, I don't get it. I guess they would know how many people are using it, but wow, I was really expecting this to be about them being gone, and I was kind of prepared to talk about that a little bit. And we've had a couple of those. We had AIM, retiring, and
that happened over
where we got to
days ago.
Yeah, that's right. They officially pulled the plug on AIM. But we've had those kind of episodes before where we've talked about things that we used before that are phasing out and stuff like that, and reminiscing. And what a weird thing. Did you ever use either of these projects?
Yeah, actually. So both. So we made an MDOT site. For I guess for like new, like younger developers and designers. This might actually be before their time. There's a time before responsive web design where
was it that long ago even?
Well, it was like Eric Meyer wrote that way.
No, Ethan Marcotte, but yeah, in 2010 is when he gave the an event apart presentation, and then he wrote the article either later that year or early in the next year. So it was right. So 2010. So
to people who are
7 years ago,
18 or 19 years old. So I made one of those for the university that I worked for, and it was a jQuery mobile thing, and jQuery mobile was really easy to use. It's really pretty dope,
It was.
Nice. Yeah. So as for jQuery UI, I see that a lot. My current employer has products out that still use jQuery UI, like tooltips and certain components in there, because it's still like a legacy jQuery front end. So not only would I have generally expected that, there's got to be like projects out there that are still using jQuery UI and jQuery mobile, but like the one that I make a living on is still using it. So
nobody's making new projects using these things. But yeah, I use jQuery UI a bit for exactly what you're saying. Like, man, I need some tooltips, and I would just grab that one piece or whatever for a couple things early on at my current job. I use jQuery UI a little bit, and I never actually used jQuery mobile, but I remember when it came out was right there at the height of the MDOT craze before responsive design, when the iPhone was around and we needed to make websites work better on it. And jQuery mobile came out right in the middle of that as like a nice way to do that. And we ended up not using the first MDOT site that I built at my current job, when that whole idea started coming around, we built it and then I think it was even like a week after we released it, jQuery Mobile came out. So, and that was the only MDOT site that we ever built, was just the one for like our main, marketing page. And then that eventually became a responsive site a couple years, over the next couple years, transitioned over into that world. So I never got a chance to use jQuery Mobile, but I kind of followed its development quite a bit, and some really smart people involved in those projects too. And it just seems like the kind of thing that it's time to let them go.
I could see that if they had announced that these were in maintenance mode, they were only going to get, security patches going forward or something like that. That seems right. But, I mean, it sounds like we're memorializing it, even though they just said that they're still around. But, to their credit, they made it really easy to use, at the time, like semi-complicated user interfaces, or to actually implement them in a way that didn't make you like lose your hair. Like I remember doing tabs was hard.
Oh yeah, super hard.
And like the little accordion stuff that jQuery UI allowed for, and
it had so many options, like the calendar date picker.
Yeah, this made your life easier.
Who didn't use the date picker from jQuery UI at one point in their career? Like, because it had every option, right? It wasn't just like there was one simple one. There was like the basic one with like 12 variations for everything you could possibly want to do with a date picker. That was kind of the beauty of jQuery UI. It was an enormous library. Like if you installed the whole thing, I don't even know how big your site would, how big that download would be.
Not to mention that you have to load it after you load the jQuery.
Right. That's true.
And what's funny, and this can like slide into another thing that happened in the last week. There is no presence of jQuery UI or jQuery Mobile on the 2017 State of JavaScript survey results.
That's true, yeah.
These were released. I guess I don't have like a specific date. I'm looking at the website, but the last couple of weeks, so mid-December.
It was really recently, yeah.
Yeah, the State of JavaScript 2017 came out, and I was just kind of poking around their mobile, and I'm looking for what are people using for mobile development, and I'm just very curious to see, is jQuery Mobile even represented? I expected, hey, maybe it'd be like
it's not
0.5% or something like that. It's not even
it wasn't one of the it wasn't on the survey. They still have like PhoneGap and stuff on there, but which I would expect that a lot of PhoneGap apps and stuff are maybe using jQuery UI and things like that, libraries of that kind.
That sounds right. Yeah,
they kind of feel like they were around the same. They kind of went hand in hand a bit for a while, so. That's interesting. Yeah, I forgot about the State of JavaScript results. We could do an entire episode just talking about that. There's so much.
And I think we might. Our next episode, we're going to do a year in review, and a lot of the news, other than the terrible news about internet policy, has been about the flourishing of these JavaScript libraries, sort of like taking over web development.
And just all the new stuff that's come out this year, has been a huge story.
Well, you know what? This is I don't have it open, but this let's make this our news. I'm going to preface this with the fact that I live in South Florida. I live in Fort Lauderdale, and so this has been big news locally. Were you guys familiar with the startup Magic Leap?
Only in that I've heard the name before, and when I know the announcement that you're talking about, and I when they said that, it's making me think of something that, like in my memory. Like, what is it? Like I've got this feeling that that Magic Leap was associated with some weird like earlier internet time. I can't remember why, and so it's probably completely unrelated, but something about the name. But I don't think regionally or anything up here that it was specifically a story around here, but it has been all over Twitter the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been. I think you might be thinking of Leap Motion, which was this kind of like a gesture controller for like presentations and stuff you could attach to your
Oh,
computer.
maybe. I'm
And
thinking something even weirder. I'm thinking something that was like a way to make like VoIP phone calls or something.
oh, interesting. Maybe this is one of
Some
those like
that kind of
maybe
technology,
this is
like
one of those
the
like Berenstein or Berenstein bears
yes,
things, right? Where have you heard like the conspiracy? Like I don't know if this actually is a conspiracy theory, but it's about like dimensional drift. That
yeah,
the reason that we remember the Berenstein bears a particular way is because that's actually what happened. But at some point, the bubbles of our universes collided, and this among a few other things like sort of flipped.
I've seen that. It's so funny.
So like
I'm
so
definitely you want to tell what the Magic Leap thing is?
for those who watch startups, Magic Leap had a lot of interest because it, I believe, was one of the most, if not the most, funded startup for never having announced the product that it's making. Right now, down here, like I live not too far from Magic Leap HQ, and it's been they're kind of like a mystery Fort Knox, right? And they've been recruiting like developers for years, and not only developers. Like once, I'm pretty sure I don't think it was a hoax because we were talking about it. They were recruiting ex astronauts, like on their jobs page, it's like, hey, we're looking for like astrophysicists and astronauts, and we were like, what on earth could they be needing astronauts for? And
Jeez.
and so excuse me, so part of it I think might have been just like those are just like little things they did to like create hype and mystery because that's worked out for them. They'd raised $4.6 billion, and finally we know that they have been working on essentially like augmented reality goggles called the Magic Leap One.
They remind me of the goggles that Will Smith wears in that. What's that movie called? Where he plays a superhero.
Oh, Hancock.
Hancock.
Yeah, they.
It reminds me of Will Smith's big goggles in Hancock for some reason. That was the first thought that I had.
My first thought was like, did they Photoshop these goggles onto these people's faces? Because it has like such like a bezel that like it looks really fake, but kind of goes hand in hand with this sort of like I don't know, at least the playful nature of their awesome website. I don't know if you looked at that.
I haven't gone to their site.
The Magic Leap One. It's pretty dope.
Whoa.
Warning: it's a 9 MB load.
Dang. Look at this.
You know,
Whoa.
right? Look at it. So
Good
while
podcasting looking
yeah,
at websites,
while
but
Dave
it's pretty
scrolls through on
cool.
audio.
All these colors. This is amazing.
Paint a picture with your words for us.
Yeah, there's like an astronaut. Some very surreal,
So what I would describe
yeah.
the Magic Leap One as are like goggles that are attached to a Discman that you hook onto your like belt, like one of those like
Yeah.
portable like CD players, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah.
But it's hard to like clearly you can't compare this against real reality, but
Yeah.
it looks pretty dope. Like the promise certainly is there, and I don't know if you've like seen like the marketing for Microsoft's HoloLens versus actually having put the HoloLens on. So I'm sure there's going to be like a
I've never
disparity
tried it.
there.
No,
But
probably.
yeah, it's cool, and it made
That's
big news on here because when they tweeted, like people were retweeting and sharing it, saying like it's happening, it's happening.
yeah, like finally after they got all that money with no product.
So what I think a lot of that money went to is toward they only mention it like briefly, but it's probably in the technology of how they're mapping the augmented reality over like over your environment. I'm not going to do this justice, but if you're wearing glasses, you have essentially like a window, between you and the rest of the world. You can see how that could be a screen. Snapchat AR is like that, or Instagram Stories AR, where it does an okay job of like projecting something onto like a table or like a donut or like a
Yep.
dancing Pikachu or whatever. But there is a layer that is distinguishable. Like so what the way I read this was that they are projecting instead of like presenting like basically putting a screen on your eyes, putting a screen in front of you that you're looking at. So like virtual reality is you put on a helmet and there's a screen in there.
Yep.
They are projecting information in like against your eye. They're projecting light at different depths and wavelengths at you. And what this is supposed to do is make the artificial object more seamlessly blend into like the natural light and environment of whatever you're looking at. So like if it's dusk, then the waterfall that suddenly like appears on your wall is going to have the right kind of depth that your brain expects, the right lighting and stuff like that, which I think is interesting. They're announcing Magic Leap 1 with an SDK coming out in early 2018, I think is the language. But I think the reason they got all their funding and where they're probably hoping to go is in essentially like helping bridge that gap between of the uncanny valley. The reason maybe we don't spend 24 hours a day in virtual reality if we have such things is because it gives you headaches, it's not super real or whatever. But if they can make the virtual and the real blend seamlessly, then we're just inching slowly toward the future.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the promise. And the reality of their like a lot of the like the comments were like, look, they created the HoloLens. I'm not willing to like let go of the mystery that they've created for years. Like I want there to be more, and so I'm really hoping.
Right. It's like you build up a story around a thing that, the mystery of it. And then when the reality actually comes out and it's a letdown because it's not everything you dreamed. So this is an area that I'm not really super invested in. Like I don't own any virtual reality products or AR products other than I guess I have an iPhone 10, which has some pretty interesting AR capabilities built into it, but that I have barely looked at, or I don't have any games or anything, so I'm pretty behind on this whole world, but it's very interesting. I will bring it back real quick that I wasn't completely crazy in thinking about this VoIP name. The thing I was thinking of is called Magic Jack.
Oh my gosh, I remember those commercials.
Yeah, a USB plug, you plug this thing in and you can make phone calls. So it was a VoIP product, still around apparently. But yeah, I remember the commercials and stuff for Magic Jack, and that's what I was thinking of when I saw Magic Leap. I'm like, what? Like that's where my mind went.
They're almost as funded as Uber, and nobody has ever heard of them. What? All right, so I think that's going to end this episode. I hope those of you at home like have happy holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate. Dan also wishes you this stuff. He's out being a vaxxer,
like vaccinating his kids.
His child vaccinated. Oh.
Controversial.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh man.
Oh gosh. At least his kid's not made with Laravel or something. On that note, we're going to try to have one more episode to cap out the year. We're going to do a retrospective. And it's probably going to be incredibly depressing. I hope you all tune in. If this is the kind of podcast that you like, please let people know. The best thing you can do is leave a kind review on your podcatcher of choice. And, repost these things on Medium or whatever. So give them some claps. And share them if you can. We really appreciate it. Dan is not here. Dave, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me at Yoda SW16 on Twitter and GitHub and anywhere else you can find.
Yeah, and I am at Stoyfield, and nobody cares where Dan is at.
Daniel, what is he? Daniel
Daniel G. Is he Daniel
G
G. Sims?
G Sims. Yeah, Daniel G Sims.
G is for Garth. I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I went to school with him, and it's possible I never knew his middle name until like just the other day.
He just learned it.
Yeah,
Nice.
party on, Garth.
Party on, Wayne.
All right, that's it.